Good morning. Welcome back to your hometown radio station, AM 1360 KOHU. It is time for the Odds and Ends program. It's brought to you by Guardian Angel Homes here on your hometown radio station. We welcome you as well online at GoHermiston.com and Mixler.com/1360-KOHU. And the web streams are powered by Blue Mountain Networks. Full hour of programming at the bottom of the hour. We will send it out to Delish Bistro for the Chamber Business Connection. We, this morning, welcome into the studio the Chief of Police from the Hermiston Police Department, Jason Edmiston, back on the program. How are we doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well myself. We have been having this conversation for a few months now about the possibility of a way for you guys to expand the number of officers you have available, and also change and enhance the coverage of police services for Good Shepherd Medical Center. You were ongoing last time we talked a month ago. Let's check in. Where are we at?
Yeah, ironically, and I don't no longer believe in coincidence, but it's perfect timing because I was looking at the shift log this morning and kind of thinking about what we were going to talk about this morning. And last night during late shift, regular patrol had two different calls for service at the hospital, one of which was an assault victim from just outside the city. Our officers went, collected some evidence, took an initial report, agency assist report, and then contacted the Umatilla County Sheriff's Office. Their detectives should be following up with that investigation today. The second incident happened several hours later, and it was a person that was transported in from another community with a gunshot wound. The hospital took some measures on their end as far as making sure the hospital was secure. Our officers, regular patrol officers, responded to the hospital and made sure everything was okay, took an initial statement, and then that responding or the appropriate agency came over to investigate the matter. I don't know the details on it. It sounds like it could have possibly been an unintentional self-inflicted gunshot wound. However, the point being, as that campus continues to grow, this is exactly what our thought process was. And so just to back up, if we could, real quick.
Yeah.
Going back to, I think it was like 2013, 14, somewhere in there, I had reached out to the hospital CEO, requested a meeting, and I just kind of wanted to get a feel of what he envisioned the relationship long-term with the Hermiston Police Department would be as the campus, as the footprint of the campus grows. It was an interesting meeting. I thought it was going to be a one-on-one meeting. There were several department heads there. It was a positive meeting, but everybody was fairly territorial with regard to what they were responsible for. And so left that meeting, not a big deal. It was, in essence, a fishing expedition on my part. Fast forward 6 years later, new CEO comes in. I request a meeting with him after, several months after he had been in place. Same reason. I kind of wanted to get a feel of what he saw as the campus grew. Super nice guy, but for reasons only, his reasons, I don't know, professional, personal, whatever. But he made it very clear there will be no guns on campus. And so, me, a baseball person, that sounds like I just went 0 for 2. So new CEO comes on board, and I had no intention of going 0 for 3. And I later learned when the new CEO came on board, Art Matheson, and I wasn't there, but I was told he's had some, had some early conversations with his board about exactly this concept. And so fortunately we had a family member of one of our officers that is on the board, and that person was able to say, well, I think Jason has had a couple meetings previously. And so, had that first meeting with Art, and in this profession and in life in general, you get gut feelings from people when you first meet them, and Art's not one of those people that puts on one hat and talks to an audience out of one side of the mouth, and then puts on a different hat and says a completely different thing to another audience member. In essence, he's not a politician. He's a straight shooter, very visionary, in my opinion. We had a great interaction and talked about what it could look like, agreed to have a second meeting, had that second meeting, and presented them with a concept. We have chewed on that for a bit. The last time I was here, things were still in play. We had yet another meeting, this time with my boss and some other players. Both captains went with me to that meeting. And so we anticipate sometime here fairly soon being able to take a contract or an agreement before the city council so that the city manager can be blessed to sign off on that. In the meantime, we did budget this budget cycle for 4 additional officers to be funded 100% by the hospital. And so it's kind of it's been difficult because, we would love to hire 4 lateral officers that we don't have to send to the academy for 16 weeks of training and then 12 weeks of in-house training before they're able to be out on their own. But we do have an officer starting in October that is a lateral officer that will be one of these 4. And then we are in backgrounds with 3 additional people right now that are all entry level, so they're going to have to go to the academy. I'm hopeful that maybe come February, somewhere March, even though these people will not necessarily be back from the academy and up to speed, we should be in a position with the 3 additional personnel that we did hire previously to patrol. May take a little bit of a hit for a little bit of a period of time, but we want to honor that contract as soon as possible, and we want to get people there. Last night was a classic example of just that. Knock on wood, nothing outrageous took place. However, just being able to be a resource not only for the hospital, their staff, but also surrounding communities.
So would the idea be that substation's not the right terminology, but the officer dedicated to Good Shepherd will have kind of their own office or location?
Yeah, they're going to have to. We're calling it a beat, and the main reason for that is I don't want to. I don't want to get us too narrow focused. I want, we have a very young department now that since we've had so many people we've hired, and so I want to rotate everybody through that. So by calling it a beat, everybody, officer-wise, in the contract, our intent is to keep the sergeants out on the road, working the road, and managing the officer that's in the hospital, and the corporals doing that as well. But there may be a time a corporal has to be assigned at the hospital. But for the most part, it's going to be the officers rotating through, and so calling it a beat, we're going to staff it 24/7. I think CEO Matheson was on the same page with me. If you see other agencies do contracts with smaller cities for a set number of hours, I'm not interested in that. I think nobody wins. Everybody feels like they're not getting what they pay for, and so if you want to do it, you just got to pull the Band-Aid off. Say we're going to be there 24/7, and we're going to be there 24/7.
Jason Edmiston, Chief of the Hermiston Police Department, with us here on the Odds and Ends program. On Tuesday, it's brought to you by Guardian Angel Homes, 813 here on AM 1360 KOHU. The officer, however, could, in the case of some type of emergency, leave the campus, right?
Yeah, and those are the details, if you will, that I really hope that we can kind of keep at the 10,000-foot level and leave out of an agreement. That was part of the discussion we had. Like with the school district, for example, they fund our school resource officers, all 3 of them. They fund each one of them 75% salary and benefits, which is huge. And we have a very, it's a professional but a very loose agreement. If they have to disappear and go back up an officer on the street for XYZ, they will. And Dr. Mooney's been incredibly understanding when that happens or when somebody calls out sick, whatever the case may be. And so same thing here. However, our commitment, because of that 100% commitment on their part, is to staff it 24/7. So if we run into some shortages due to illness, we'll have to work through those. And overtime is one way that we will have to work through those. But based on the interactions we've had so far, very reasonable people at the hospital between Mr. Matheson, and then his number 2, Jonathan Edwards. It's been very enjoyable so far.
Outside of the emergency room, which is the immediate place I can imagine a police presence being necessary, what else do you suspect this officer does? I
think a lot more than what people think, and I've been asked the question, how are the troops responding to it? Well, our officers are no different than any other human. Change is difficult sometimes to swallow, and if this goes bad, I'll take full credit. But there's going to be a lot for a person to stay busy. Outside of even just the ER, there's going to be just the ability to walk around the campus. We are not going to be security per se, but in essence, we are going to be in a proactive mode to be able to drive the parking lot, making sure there's no car prowls go on, which do happen at the hospital. Making sure that people that do not belong wandering the halls of the hospital are not wandering the halls of the hospital. Hospitals and schools, unfortunately, as we have seen over decades, are soft targets, and so we want to come alongside the hospital and fortify not only the physical structure, but the internal structure, and be a resource for the staff. And I think, not to mention, the hospital owns property off of the campus.
Sure.
And so, we're going to find a way to be able to, keep our eyes on those properties as well. I think that's only good, a good relationship between both of us will establish, what the expectations are, what the roles are, and what we're able to do, what we're not able to do.
How important is that idea of walking a beat, quote unquote, is that idea of being able to be more personable and having more positive interactions? How much does that play into why you want to do this?
Well, I think that's one of those intangibles that I'm looking forward to. And I really appreciate you bringing it up, because nobody's really asked me that before. But 90%, if not more, of what the normal beat officer deals with is negative. People don't call us when something good has happened. Getting stopped on a traffic stop and getting a ticket is not a fun experience. And so every officer, I think, yearns for that 5 to 10% of the day of being able to make a positive change in somebody's life or having a positive interaction. And so just that, walking those halls, establishing those connections, being a resource for people that are ill, that are in there, that may have a question. I really think that's where, as we get into this, people are going to want to work the hospital. And not to mention, if an officer has 2 12-hour shifts left and then they're going on a 2-week vacation, they're not going to want to be out on the road catching reports. They would rather be kind of in a coasting mode, if you will, and able to get ready for their vacation, make sure they've got everything cleared out. And so back to your question about a substation. Yeah, basically an office, a small office space. We talked about, a safe, just to temporarily be able to store evidence, to transport it from the hospital back to our evidence room. Access to, forms and everything that our officers normally do elsewhere to be able to do there. And so I don't think we're going to leave a huge footprint inside the hospital. But I think just having the ability to know that somebody is there when something adverse happens, and having that quick response, much like our officer assigned at the high school. It's why we do the drills at the high school, and so I just I'm looking really forward to this partnership. So,
in the timeline process, you are ready to put this to the city manager and the council?
So right now it's between the city attorney and then the hospital. They're finalizing the details of the agreement, and so I'm hopeful that sometime, maybe the second week or second meeting in October, I don't know, that we'll be in a position to present that to the council.
Very good. Well, we appreciate the conversation, and we will talk to you again next month.
Perfect. Thank you.
8:20 is the time, and the Odds and Ends program continues with Assistant City Manager Mark Morgan here on the Tuesday morning program. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Oh, I suppose I have to hit that button, and then it's on. Try again.
Good morning.
There we go. Yeah. It's fall. Usually fall means we start winding down construction projects. Are we winding down construction projects in Hermiston?
I certainly hope so. Yeah. I think our team gets tired of me sometime around March, April or so. I start telling them, hey guys, winter's coming. I got to get ready because we start planning out these projects and looking at the schedules, and we start looking at paving, and it's like, okay, well, October, that's comes sooner than you think. So, yep, probably the biggest, most impactful project that folks are impacted by is our water main replacement project in the downtown area. So they've been doing a whole lot of work on Gladys Avenue, and that crossed 4th Street, I think, is where most people saw a lot of that work taking place. They just finished paving, so that is almost complete on the Gladys portion right now. So they still have it closed off to everything but local traffic on that section. But the other portion is over on Hurlburt Avenue between 6th and 7th. So it's kind of tucked away, but starting potentially the end of this week or early next week, they'll shift over into the portion that most people will really see an impact on, which is on Main Street. So starting on Main Street from 5th all the way out to 9th Street, they'll be in there digging up and replacing the water main along that section through there. So be prepared for some traffic diversions because mainly, particularly for folks that may be coming into town or heading out of town on Diagonal Road. They're coming in. They're going to end up getting diverted really before they hit the intersection with 7th. And so be prepared to find an alternate route into the downtown area if you're coming in from that section for probably upwards of a month or so as they're diverting traffic in that area. But ultimately, the piping they're replacing in that area is nearly 100 years old. So it's either 100 years old or undersized. So we'll end with a much better product for the community.
These are more visual than, let's say, we've had Mark Rose talk about the library project. I didn't ask Jason about where we're at on the safety center project, but these are also city entities, and they have these major reconstruction projects. How do you, as a city hall staff, support the library, the police department, as they go into these projects?
Yeah, so each one is always a little bit different, and each one has their own flavor. But generally speaking, the individual departments, they know what they have, and so that's where we'll bring on consultants that really help provide the construction management oversight and help guide those individual department heads. So the City Hall staff, the administrative staff at City Hall, we don't do too much other than helping to get them coordinated with the construction management consultants to get those projects going.
The displacement piece, though, is there a role in trying to figure out what you do with an entire police department? Yeah,
it's quite the chess game, figuring out where everybody goes. So, it's always a challenge, and that's one of the challenges of having a growing community. It's the same thing that I have whenever we have new businesses that are looking to come to town or something like that, and they'll say, hey, can you send me a list of all, every, commercial property that you have that has a building of over, 5,000 square feet? And it's like, well, there isn't one. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's a good and a bad thing. And
there isn't a property. There isn't a list.
Yeah, there's no the properties on that list. So yeah, that's the challenge. Whenever we're looking at expanding a facility or doing something like that, you kind of have to bring your own capacity with you. You got to either build new or something like that. So that creates some interesting challenges, but ultimately benefits the community in the long run because hopefully we have more capacity. So.
Mark Morgan, Assistant City Manager, with us here on the Odds and Ends program. It's brought to you by Guardian Angel Homes. 8:25 is the time. We're about to have the Chamber Business Connection, and they partnered with us. There was the City Council forum earlier this week. There are going to be new councilors just by virtue of a couple not running again. What is the onboarding process, so to speak, as you get somebody ready to take over a role like a city council position?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we do definitely try to have each one of the candidates, when they're still candidates, come in and meet with the city manager, and he just kind of talks them through, kind of gives them a high level, here's, also answer questions. What do you have? What questions do you have? Get them kind of a sense of what the layout is, of how the city operates and those types of things. Because a lot of times, folks, they're not. Some candidates, they may have been attending council meetings for a long time or watching really closely, but other times it's just folks that just have a desire to help the community, and so they're not, living and breathing the stuff and understand all the ins and outs of the city charter and all those types of things. So once the election is done, then every year, and this happens whether or not we have a council election or not, but we do an annual goal setting process, and we've been doing it really in earnest now for about 8 or 9 years. And so we have a consultant that comes in early January timeframe every year, and so we spend a couple of full days, typically a Friday evening and all day Saturday type of a thing, with the council, just kind of doing the get to know you type exercises, so that everybody kind of understands where everybody's coming from, and then doing the brainstorming, looking at, well, here's what the community's been working on for a long time. Things like, here's what the Hermiston 2040 vision, said, kind of getting them up to speed on those things. And how does that incorporate with what last year's goals were? How did we progress on last year's goals? Now what do we have looking forward to into next year? And then as a group, that group then sets what this upcoming year's goals are, and then that's what informs the work of the staff. And so I think that's also where, a lot of times, every time that there's city council elections, sometimes folks will say, well, the city council, they just rubber stamp whatever the city staff brings to them. Well, generally speaking, that's because, we do a lot of work with the council early on in the process to get a sense of, as a whole, as a group, what is the direction that they want the community to go. So generally speaking, when things come to the city council, it's generally thought to be things that the council is supportive of and that they fits in with the goals that they have. So it's a long process and takes a lot of work, but I think we've got it down pretty well now.
The idea of new projects, and I wonder if you can just give us an update briefly where we're at. Brandon Arts was on a month ago talking about the potential of a committee to explore a pool and facility. Is that committee together at this point? Yeah,
so I couldn't give you 100% on exactly where it is. I know that I think they've had their initial meetings. I'm not sure if they're still adding potential members. I don't think everybody made it to that very first meeting, but it's still definitely in the early stages of formation. But it's moving forward.
You didn't have to grab a seat on that particular one?
No. So it's, Byron, the city manager, and I, we kind of divide and conquer on some of these things. So it's sometimes better to have one of us be fully invested and fully up to speed on things rather than both of us kind of splitting time on those. So that's definitely, he'll be helping to lead that project and that effort with Brandon.
What is the decision-making process? Is it thumb war? Rock, paper, scissors?
I don't know. That's a good question. But, ultimately...
How do you two decide who gets what?
Yeah, that's a good... Yeah, leg wrestling, I don't know. But whoever has the most time, I guess, at the time.
So never?
Yeah, well, we figure it out, I guess. We soldier through.
All right. Well, we appreciate the